Okay. In the last 2 years, I have changed my life forever. In the last 2 years, I found happiness and fulfillment for the first time ever. And at the end of this talk, you'll be able to understand not only how that was possible for me to do, but how it's possible for you to do as well. And it comes down to the power of community. You see, we're all members of a number of different communities around us at any one point. We might not realize it, but we are. Communities have the power to shape your life, and communities have the power to change your life. I'm going to share my story with you, and it starts badly, I'm afraid. At the age of 14, I ran away from home, but not in the traditional sense. My mum, my brother and I ran away from home. We packed up everything we had into our car, and we moved to a safe house to escape my abusive father. We spent 5 years in that safe house, and when I was 19 years of age, we received the news that he had killed himself. He committed suicide. And at that point in my life, it was actually good news. It was welcome news. It marked an end to a turbulent time in our lives. We were now safe, and we could now move forward. At the age of 21, I had my inheritance, and I had a desire to waste that money as quickly as possible. I was so angry at what had happened. I decided to go traveling, and I would travel through Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Borneo, Bali, Australia, and America. I was definitely going to waste that money. But I was also looking to reset the Etch-a-Sketch of my life, to make sense of what had happened to me, and make plans for the future. So in October 2004, I set off, and in December 2004, I found myself on Phi Phi Island, which is on the west coast of Thailand. And on Boxing Day 2004, at about 10:30 in the morning, I was awoken to hear screaming. Screaming like I've never heard screaming before. And as I looked out the window of my bungalow, I saw people running past in terror. I had no idea what was happening. And while I was trying to make sense of this, a tsunami wave engulfed my bungalow. I went from a room full of air like this to a room full of water, instantly. And it was a strange experience. I struggled for air, and I struggled to find my way out because I was trapped and I started to drown. And I was also struggling to make sense of what was actually happening. And whilst I was struggling, the water pressure and the other buildings around my bungalow caused it to collapse. It collapsed, and I popped out the top like a lucky penny to some much needed air. And as I gasped for air, I reached out for the nearest palm tree that I could, and I held on with everything that I had. And as I held on to that palm tree, I watched people, bodies, buildings, luggage, all sorts flying past me. And I was convinced it was my last day on Earth. The water eventually subsided. I was able to climb down from the tree and then run to some nearby higher ground. And I was saved. I had escaped the tsunami with my life, but only just. And at the time, they said that the difference between living and dying in the tsunami was seconds and centimeters. There were bungalows next to mine that did not collapse. And the inhabitants were killed because they drowned in their buildings, and they had no idea what had happened. So I'd gone traveling to make sense of my life and try and make plans to move forward, to get away from one life-changing situation, and I found myself literally in the path of another life-changing situation, essentially a worse one. I came back to the UK, and I decided I needed some structure, I needed some discipline and some regular income, so I thought I would get a job. I'll get a job for about 6 months or so. That was my limit, 6 months. And in that time, I would again make sense of what's going on, try and make some plans, and try and move forward with my life. 6 months, tops. 12 years later, I was still there. And in those 12 years, I became very, very good at what I was doing. But I made a couple of really, really disappointing realizations. And the first one is this: you can be very, very good at what you do, but be deeply, deeply unhappy. You can be very, very good at what you do, but be deeply unfulfilled. And you can be really good at what you do and look successful, but feel like a failure. And I felt like a failure, but you wouldn't have known it. If you'd have seen me at that time, I had a new car every few months. I was in a sales position, and in my entire 12-year career, I did not miss one sales target, so money was not a problem for me. And finally, I had a field-based account management role. And field-based is a code word we use in the UK for working at home in your pajamas. So working at home in my pajamas, I had the privilege of watching my children grow up. On the face of it, life looked pretty good. But I was looking at my colleagues who were in their 60s and 70s, and I was terrified. Terrified that this was all the future held for me, and terrified that I knew I was capable of more, and I didn't know what to do about it. I just didn't know what to do. I felt trapped. I spent years and years researching happiness, inspiration, motivation, how to change your life. If it's on the internet, I have seen it. But I made no progress whatsoever. And with the arrival of my children, the pressure mounted only worse. Because above all else in my life, I wanted to set a good, positive role model for them. I wanted to be a positive fatherly figure for them, because I clearly lacked one. And in working a job that I did not like and I felt unfulfilled, I was not doing that. I started to get desperate. I started to get reckless. I called it reckless. Actually, what happened was totally necessary. I started to reach out to people around me. Not the people I worked with, but the people around me. And I shared my story with them, and my experience with them, and my frustration with them. You see, a community is built for 3 components. The first one is communication. When we share our stories and our experiences with the people around us, when we communicate with the people around us, we then allow for the second phase to happen, which is connection. Shared ideas, shared values, shared visions. Where there's common ground, there's often community. And then finally, that leads to contribution. You contribute to the group, and the group contributes to you. I had years and years of trying to save myself and not telling a soul what I was doing, apart from my long-suffering wife, and I got nowhere. I got absolutely nowhere. So I decided to break out and to talk to people. And if you'd have met me about 2 years ago, I would have introduced myself to you as something like this. I have the best job in the world on paper, but I cry myself to sleep every night and I don't know what to do. Can you help me? I was actively asking people for help for the first time in my life. And I was unknowingly tapping into the power of community. Communication, the first step. It was a few short months before I started to connect with people that had great lives of fulfillment and of joy. They loved what they did, and I was able for the first time to realize what I wanted to do with my life. And not only was I connected with these people, they began to contribute to me. They shared their time, their experience, their advice, their expertise. They wanted to help me get to where I wanted to be in life. You see, the world is full of wonderful, wonderful people that want nothing but the best for you and want to help you. If only they knew. If only you would ask them. And certainly the people that I work with, if I'd have asked them, maybe things would have been different. And then this happened. Finally. It took about 33 years of life for me to finally actually find happiness and fulfillment. Be happy with who I was and what I was doing. I'd harnessed the power of community, unknowingly. I communicated with people and I shared myself for the first time ever, which led to connection, which led to contribution. But then something else happened. So in my time of researching what it means to be happy and fulfilled and to find my way in the world, I came across a word that has come to define my life and it has the power to change your life. And that word is deserve. And it's a word that we misuse and we misunderstand on a daily basis. I had so many terrible things happen to me, I felt like I didn't deserve them. I felt very much like the victim, like life was happening to me and I didn't know what to do. Excuse me. I wanted to find out what it took to deserve things and why I deserved the things that I had. And as Tamia said, I did so much research that I actually wrote a book on the subject. And it's called You Deserve It. And it charts the 5 principles of what it takes to deserve the life you want and why you deserve the life you have. And I will share the first 3 principles with you now. And the first principle of You Deserve It is this. You deserve everything that you have in your life right now. Everything. And this is because the actions that you've taken and the actions you've not taken have led you to this point. The decisions you've made and the decisions you've avoided making have led you to this point. The things you have caused to happen and your reaction to the things that have happened to you have led you to this point. So you deserve everything you have in your life right now. It does make for tough reading. But there's a caveat. There is a caveat. You can only deserve something that you can influence. You can only deserve something that you can influence. Illness, the death of a loved one, tsunamis. Things that cannot be influenced by definition cannot be deserved. So principle number 1 is that you deserve everything you have in your life right now. And whilst you can't deserve things you can't influence, you certainly deserve how you respond to them. You see, I believe we are all responsible. And for me, responsible isn't one word, but 2. It's response-able. We are able to choose our response. It's not what happens to you in life, it's what you do about it that makes the difference. It's decisions, not conditions, that will shape your life. I get a very dry mouth, sorry. So that's the first principle. The second principle, think about all the lovely things that you don't have in your life right now, but you think you should have them, and you're just confused. You don't know why you don't have them. Well, the second principle is that you don't deserve anything more than you have in your life right now. You don't deserve anything more than you have in your life right now. And it's logical, because if you did deserve it, you would already have it. So you need to look very closely at what you're doing. Who do you need to become? What do you need to do? Who do you need to connect with to go forward and to deserve the things that you want? And this takes me to the third principle of you deserve it, the one that I harnessed, and it's to do with the power of community and contribution. And it's this: to deserve more is to serve more. So the word deserve, we misuse it and we misunderstand it. We use it in the terms of things that we are owed and things that are due to us, and what can we take and what is ours. But the word deserve actually comes from the French word déservir, which means to serve zealously. It's about what you get as a result of doing things for other people. We must deposit before we can withdraw. We must give before we can receive. We must serve before we can deserve. So 2 years ago, I changed my life forever. 2 years ago, I found happiness and fulfillment that I never thought was possible. It was because I harnessed the power of community. I shared my story with the people around me and communicated with them, which led to a connection, which then led to them contributing to me and helping me to move my life forward. But it's when I contributed back to that community, I sought to serve that community in the way I was served, that was when everything changed. So if you want to change your life, and if you want a better life than you have now, you need to understand this, that to deserve more is to serve more. And that is the power of community. Thank you.